Hello plant lovers, and thank you for tuning back into my channel. And today it is, yes, Sarcochilus orchid flowering time. So let's do a quick follow-up video about these beautiful Australian natives. It is mid-spring here in, I was going to say sunny Melbourne. In fact, it's not sunny today. It is very wintry and cold, but it is mid-spring, which means it's Sarcochilus orchid flowering time, as you can see from this beauty right here. So I thought we'd just go over a few more details about this wonderful and easy to grow orchid. I made a video a few months ago about basic care for Sarcochilus, which I'll just link here. Now, I won't bore you with all the basic care because it is in that video that I linked before, but as mine is now in bloom, I thought we'd go over a few more details specific to the flowering of these orchids because each species has its quirks. So firstly, let me put my geographical pin in the map so you know what my climate is. I'm in Melbourne, Southeast Australia, which they say is a cold temperate climate, but like most places these days can go all over the place. Melbourne does have cold, wet winters, which don't freeze, and it can have erratically hot, dry, but also torrential rain summers. And the temperatures in summer can easily get way above 40 degrees Celsius, which is, I think, about 110 Fahrenheit. So very hot and dry here, but it doesn't freeze. So with these orchids, mine all live outside, under shelter, with filtered dappled light, protected from too much rainfall, but nonetheless outside all year. Depending on where you are, they can work indoors very easily, or you can easily put them outdoors if you have a temperate climate which doesn't freeze too much, because they are occasional frost tolerant. If you have continual frosty winter weather, then they're not going to love you. As I mentioned in the previous video, they are lithophyte, so again, like most orchids, fast draining medium is the most important thing. They like a bit of sun in the winter, otherwise dappled sunlight, and protection from harsh sunlight. Okay, we've got that out of the way. Now it's flowering time. I have to say that this is the most reliable orchid I have. It can take all manner of harsh treatments. It reliably blooms. I think I've got 8 spikes this year. There's no fragrance to the flower, but they are beautiful, and they do last for a little bit longer than the Australian Dendrobium orchids, which tend to be done within 5 to 10 days. This does last a couple of weeks, so it is a beautiful orchid to grow. So some flowering basics. Firstly, it will flower in spring, and it will depend on your climate as to whether it's early, mid or late spring. At the moment it is mid-spring. The flower spikes emerge in late winter, early spring, and so you need to ensure that they've got their nice strong winter light at the beginning of winter, just to really trigger that flower spike production. Now I'll come in closer, but what you can see is that the growth habit of the Sarcochilus is a little bit like a vanda. So you have a cane almost with leaves that radiate from it, and each cane is capable of producing 1 flower spike. Unlike other orchids though, each cane will flower in successive years. So in some orchid species, for example, a pseudobulb will flower once and then it dies and another pseudobulb comes up. Not with Sarcochilus. So each of these stems is capable of producing 1 flower spike, and it generally is 1 spike per stem. Ergo, the more vegetative growth you can promote, the more stems you have, the more flowers you're going to get. The flowers emerge from a similar spot as a Phalaenopsis orchid, from the leaf joint, and in subsequent years you won't get a flower from that same joint, but the flowers will generally appear further up the stem as the leaves continue to grow. So a little bit like a Phalaenopsis in that regard. Each stem is capable of flowering every year with 1 flower spike until the cane eventually dies off because others have taken its place, and this is the oldest one, which is looking, well, I don't know. I'm not quite sure how long the canes last on this orchid, but anyway, we shall see. Each flower spike is very generously covered in blooms. The beauty of these is not really the fragrance, but the spray of the blooms is very elegant, and they do look fantastic. So I always bring it inside when it's in bloom and leave it somewhere where you can see it, and it thrives. If you're growing it inside, of course, you won't have any problem with that. This is the species Sarcochilus, which is called, I just have to remember, hartmannii. I'll put the name across the screen. This is a fairly basic flower, if we want to call it as such. There are now 1 million hybrids out there, which is fantastic. And this baby is such a hybrid. And as you can see, its flower spikes, it's got 2 flower spikes, and they're a little further behind this one, which is fantastic. So I'm going to get more Sarcochilus flowering, period. This one is called Elegant Heart, and I have no idea what it looks like because, and here is my secret, I bought this from a nursery just after the flower had died, and it was heavily reduced because no one wants to buy a plant with a dead flower spike apart from me and apart from you, because it is the cheapest way to build your orchid collection. So this one was half price. I had no idea what it looks like, but I will soon see. The buds look quite light. The hybrid color variants go from anything from a very deep plum to yellow now, and all manner of spots and dots on the flower itself. So have a look and see what you can find. Which brings us to the cycle of life of the Sarcochilus orchid. Observe, Exhibit B is a seedling. Now, with many orchid species, buying seedlings is a bit of a risky endeavor because you just don't know how slow a grow they are and when they're finally going to bloom. But with Sarcochilus, they can even bloom in their first year, depending on many mysterious factors, I think. I wouldn't bank on that, but they are a much faster bloomer than many other orchids. So it is, again, quite economic to give seedlings a go, and don't be frightened of them because they will mature very quickly. So to get a flower, you are going to need a mature growth. And then to get multiple flower spikes, you need multiple mature growth points. But this one, and I will come in closer to show you, has already got 3 growth points. And this being the first one, I would imagine next year, this will give me a flower. This seedling is probably about a year old. I bought it perhaps 6 months ago. So there you are. Give seedlings a go because it's a great way to get a few. There we are. Sarcochilus orchids 101/2, because I did make a care video a little while ago. Super easy, tough, resilient, forgiving, which not many orchids are. You pretty much guaranteed flowers, I think, as long as you give it winter sunlight. And there you are. Keep it on the dry side, keep it in free draining medium, give it some winter sunlight, and you are set to go. Thank you for watching, plant lovers, and if you do have any questions about Sarcochilus, feel free to leave them below. If I can answer, I will. I am a mere amateur stumbling my way through the path of orchid growing, but I've had this now for quite a few years and it's done very well for me, and I've just kind of branched out now into some hybrids and seedlings, so we'll see how those go. But the hybrid is got flower spikes, so I'm very happy with that. Thank you for watching. Next week, it is another flowering Dendrobium. I feel I've upped my Dendrobium game, so I'm going to show you one that's in bloom that's really beautiful and share what I've learned about it, because it took a few years to figure out the best way to look after that one. Take care, plant lovers, and I will see you next week.